Lord, may the words I speak be those you want us to hear. Amen. Well, I wonder if you're the sort of person who always reads the instructions before embarking upon anything. Or do you plunge straight in? Or do you watch other people and try to copy? Well, there's all sorts of learning styles, and speaking for myself, I tend to apply different ones in different contexts. At an exercise class, I listen and I copy the instructor, or at least I try to, with varying levels of success. If I'm cooking a new dish and using a recipe for the first time, well, I follow it. But a little later, I tend to go a bit off-piste. If you ever ask me for a recipe, it will come amended in several respects and in some cases bear no real resemblance to the original. Flat pack furniture, well, the instructions are followed to the extent I can understand them, and I never use a sat-nav. And I hope all of you had the chance to read Candice's contribution to Newslink for January. If not, why not pick up a copy at the back of church or ask Emma, email her and ask for a copy to be sent to you. In it, Candice encourages us to consider joining in God's work in the world by praying on all occasions, not just on Sunday, and to pray about pretty much everything and anything that seems good to us. She offers some resources and reminds us that any prayers left on the prayer cross will be used in intercessions at the service on Thursday morning. And I commend those resources to you. And for those of you who like to read instructions before you start, they're absolutely brilliant, as indeed are fairly hefty tomes on prayer. Does it make a difference? And if you look at my copy, you can see that I've read part of the way through it, because there comes a point at which practice, actually getting on and doing it, is the best way forward. And I recommend you thinking about prayer as being a conversation, a chat, and one which takes place in all sorts of places and all sorts of times. And Candice talks about that, and this morning I had an experience of that myself when I couldn't find my glasses. I still haven't found my glasses, and I am using an old prescription, so some of you are fairly fuzzy, but maybe that's best on a cold Sunday morning. And so answers to prayers often take place in strange and different ways because, of course, my prayer was answered. I am here. I can see what I'm doing, sort of. We don't need a manual. Some things simply take practice. But you might be the sort of person who needs a routine, and that's absolutely great. Maybe that's the best way. And you may have your time that you set aside to pray. You might have a special chair in a quiet place. Or you might be a bit more like me, where you have a running commentary rather than setting aside specific time. You might prefer to speak out loud. You might prefer to find someone to pray with. I remember sitting on a hillside once, having a deep conversation with a friend who was very unhappy. And we prayed together, not with our heads bowed and our eyes shut, but we had our eyes open, watching a hawk making lazy circles in the sky as we asked God to take my friend's fears from her, to give her courage to face difficulties, and to be with her on every step she took. Barbara Brown Taylor calls prayer the practice of being present to God. And it's something that we each do differently. Some of us are silent. Some of us use words. Some of us use words that have been written by others. Some of us use our own. Some people need music, others need quiet. Some are still and some need movement. But whatever it is, however we do it, prayer is not a contest. We need to find our own way of doing it. And sometimes that comes from listening to the way other people construct their prayers. And sometimes it's just, as I said, a chat, a conversation. Being present to God infers something more than one-sided requests. Perhaps an openness to being challenged or changed. And when we think about listening to God, maybe some of us do hear a response. Maybe there are those of you who have had an experience similar to Samuel when he heard a clear, I want to talk to you. I want to tell you something. But maybe sometimes the answers are in our own lives, hiding in plain sight. Maybe they come in the things we read, hear from others, or experience just in simply carrying on. Maybe the answers are in our own hands, and the conversation we have with God helps us to work out what we need to do next. Now, Samuel, that young boy as he is in our reading, was an answer to silent prayer. His mother Hannah, like Sarah and Rebecca, considered themselves cursed as they had not yet had children. Hannah was in the temple. She was praying in her heart silently, yet moving her lips. And I understand that in that time, somebody praying would have prayed out loud. And so she was challenged by the priest Eli, who thought she was drunk. And she confessed her deep unhappiness at her childhood, at her childlessness. She asked Eli to think well of her and to pray for her. And she kept her promise that if she had a son, she would give him to God. And that is how Samuel, as a small boy, ends up in the temple, working alongside Eli. But Samuel would become a great prophet. And that is what God had in store for him. But that was started by him not knowing about the Lord, but hearing the Lord call to him. Our opening hymn this morning was I, the Lord of Sea and Sky. And we sang that refrain over and over again. Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I will go if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. I will hold your people in my heart. What is your calling? What does God want you to do? For we each have a calling, one that might change over time as we go through different stages of life. But we also have a collective calling, one that doesn't change quite so much. At St. Peter's, we say we are here to worship God, to make friends, and to change the world. And a large part of that is to practice being present to God. On the times we're gathered together, as we are now, and when we are dispersed. And that is underpinned by prayer, both as part of our collective worship and as part of our dispersed individual prayer. And the pastoral group's been thinking about how we might pray for one another. How can we answer that call to hold God's people in our hearts, to create a space and opportunities to pray when people have particular needs over and above the use of the prayer cross? For the Gospels tell us that it is better to pray than it is to worry. And I'm sure you will have times when your prayer has been simply one of, Lord, help me. I'm facing something that scares me, and I would like other people to pray for me. People I can trust to keep my request confidential, who will have committed to pray. The circumstances can be immediate and short-term, or long-term. And if you're a prayer, You may know that your call is to pray. You may have a routine already of praying for people, to hold God's people in your heart. And you may be prepared to join a team who will commit to pray for those who have asked. Or you may actually not be a prayer, but want to start. You may be wondering how to answer the implicit challenge in the refrain, I will follow if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. And to be part of a team where you will be enabled to pray in your own way, in your own time, whether you are a structured person in a routine or whether you pray when you remember to do it. I often pray as I walk round Henleys, which I seem to do a lot of lately, calling to mind people as I pass their houses, maybe simply asking God to take care of them. And we're proposing to invite people to express an interest in joining a team. We will produce a leaflet setting out the ways in which the process will work. We're still working through that. It will probably be via email, and we intend to appoint a coordinator. But that leaflet will be available very soon, and we will set out in it ways in which we will respect confidentiality. But in the meantime, if this is something you think you would like to join, or something that you would appreciate the opportunity to request prayer, we'd be really encouraged if you would like to talk to us about it. Talk to me, Candice, or Mark. And so my prayer for each of us today is that in our collective calling, we would learn to bring all our concerns and all our joys before God in prayer. That we would hold each other in our hearts, hold all people in our hearts. That some of us might commit to pray for others, and that we might be bold enough to share our needs with them. Psalm 139 is the psalm that has been set for today. It's a powerful psalm, beloved by many, for it speaks of how God has known us since before our conception, as indeed he knew Samuel before his conception, and how God's right hand will hold us fast, how for God night is as bright as day, even when all we see is darkness. And I'm going to invite you now to listen to this prayer of David Adam that paraphrases much of what is contained in Psalm 139. So I invite you to listen. Lord, you are. Lord, you are here in this very moment. Lord, you are around me and within me. You may be unseen, yet you are very near. You made me, love me, and are within me. You are my light, Lord, no matter how dark the day. You are the light, Lord, that cannot be overcome. You are the light of my life and the light in my life. Lord, abiding in me, you are my salvation. With you in me and I in you, I shall not perish, but have everlasting life. Lord, you are here in this very moment. Lord, you are. Amen.